That's by way of introduction. We've got breaks scheduled during the day. I think our first presentation, which is due in 3 minutes, we're going to start 3 minutes early back there, everybody, is an overview of the U.S. real estate market. And our speaker is Joe Munoz from LaSalle. It's now, by my calculation, Joe's based in Chicago, which is my hometown. By my calculation, it's 7 minutes after 2 in the morning in Chicago. I suggested to Joe that I really wanted him to go first because he's going to provide the overview. And I said I would understand perfectly if he didn't want to get up at 2 to give the presentation. So in Joe's case, it's a recording. We won't have a chance to ask questions, but you'll be able to follow up with questions to Joe after the fact with his email address. So with no further ado, if our video people would run our first presentation from Joe Munoz.
Hello and good morning to everyone, both in Germany, in person at the conference, as well as online. My name is Joe Munoz with LaSalle. I'm based in Chicago, and I oversee LaSalle's Value Add Fund. I have the privilege of setting the stage for the rest of the speakers you'll have throughout the conference. And to that end, over the next 25 minutes, I'll cover 2 topics, the US macro more broadly, the optimism and stimulus flowing through the economy, and of course, the US real estate market fundamentals, valuations, transaction activity, as well as implications for where investors have clearly set their focus for the next 12 months. Starting off with employment and GDP, we've seen a clear improvement at the overall level and trending towards back what most would consider to be normal levels. The highlight, what's been dominating the conversation, has really been in the job market, where recent job reports have really been so-so. This is really attributed much more to the lack of labor supply versus the demand for opening of jobs. And much of the conversation revolves around potential employees being very picky about how they re-enter the job market, whether that's due to stimulus that creates a better alternative in the near term, or just wanting to find the right fit for the long-term job positioning. These anecdotes match up with the statistics. Unemployment is just below 6%, but as far as total employment level, jobs remain 7.5 million below pre-pandemic levels. But overall, as you shift to GDP, the expectation is that the U.S. should be back to normal economic output by the end of the year, leveling off in a long-term trend right around sub 2%. So much of that GDP rebound has been fueled by consumer spending. And we could see here the behavior of different categories of consumer spending throughout the pandemic, many of which are not a surprise. In the early stages, of course, you had a drop-off in terms of food and drinking establishment type revenue. You also had a drop-off, of course, in clothing and accessories, as people really didn't need, given what was forward. But what we've seen is everything has generally returned to pre-pandemic levels. These are indexed to February of 2020 as at the 100% level. They started to taper off. And one surprise has been that home improvement has continued to pace ahead, whether that's follow through of activity for home improvements, building out home offices. It's hard to say. There's some optimism from retailers that there'll be almost 2 years worth of back to school shopping coming, but it seems to be that consumer spending is mostly back and starting to taper off at normal levels. Placing the U.S. stimulus activity in the context of other large countries, U.S. stimulus to date has represented more than 25% of GDP, putting it just behind the UK, Germany, Italy, and Japan. That being said, there's another $4 trillion of planned spending that would increase the percentage of GDP to just over 40%, in line with Germany's level of response. In the $2.3 trillion infrastructure spending plan, there's really 4 buckets to break this into. You have traditional infrastructure, roads and bridges and the like, at over $620 billion. You have quality of life at home, whether that be internet or improvements to infrastructure at home, at another $650 billion. There's a research and development and manufacturing category totaling approximately $580 billion, and a relatively new category of caregiving infrastructure to help the job market and help families with needs outside of the workplace at approximately $400 billion. In addition, there's an announced American Families Plan, which is an additional $1.8 trillion in federal investment, mostly in education,